This podcast is brought to you by SafeLinks.
It's a nice timepiece.
Yeah, it's the latest tagger. It's the latest one. I've only bought it 2 months ago. But it has the open back on it, so you can see collect watches.
Nice.
So
That's spot on. Really nice. Been to Vietnam and got a Rolex.
have you?
Yeah.
Vietnam. I've spent some time there.
Have you?
Yeah.
We went to
Hanoi.
Ho Chi Minh, Hoi An, then Hanoi, and then back to Ho Chi Minh for a few days.
Right.
Proper good. Cheapest chips was getting beers for 20p.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
mad, isn't it?
It's so good, isn't it?
I was in the airport in Vietnam, travelling back, and I was just, and you know, you can see somebody out the corner of your eye running towards you, thinking, I can see somebody's coming, and there's a woman and two small kids, local woman, and I thought she's not can't be coming to me. I don't know anybody, and she come and she pushed her son in front of me, and she says, "Talk to him." Because I was really in a remote part of Vietnam, he'd never seen an Englishman before. But he'd been studying English at school. So I'm stood there and she's videoing this. So she's videoing me while I'm doing it. So I'm stood there talking to this guy. I was like, "Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you." All the things you would say as learning in English. What's your name? And I'm thinking, she's videoing me here. I'm in a strange country. I don't really like this. So I got my phone out and started videoing them. Saying, I'm doing this for my own protection now, so I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. But this woman's videoing me. She just kept laughing. And she keep talking. I said, I'm going to have to go now. I'm just going to have to go. weirdest thing ever. Honestly, weirdest thing ever.
Do you remember you had that one at an exhibition? That lady from Ukraine filmed you, and then she came back the next day saying, "You're famous in Ukraine." Like
She put it on Ukrainian Facebook, and she'd come back and she's like, "Look, 200 likes."
wow, going viral in Ukraine.
Brilliant.
Andy Spence is a fire safety expert with over 2.5 decades of experience.
And he's the joint managing director of innovative UK-based manufacturer Britannia Fire and a driving force behind the P50.
Good morning. Welcome, guys. I'm really impressed with this little podcast room you got here. It's really good.
Well, this is our first episode, so I'd like to welcome you.
Right.
Yeah.
And at the start.
Anyways, up from here, we'll see. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
We'd like to start by learning a little bit more about Andy Spence as the person.
Okay, so Andy Spence, I'm 53 years old, 54 in April, so been a long time in this industry now, so over 25 years, as you say. Started off my career, if you like, within Thomas Glover, TG Products, who sadly are going to be no more from May. In the current guise, I know that somebody else is taking them over, but yeah, it was I was born into that industry by a gentleman called Mark Wardle, who was my best friend at the time. I should have fell out with him at the time for bringing me into this game, but anyway. But no, I worked for NatWest Bank, and Mark was a best friend, and he was trying to poach me to go and work with him as the sales manager at TG.
Oh, okay.
Which I eventually did, and here I am all these years on. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's been an eventful one, and certainly an eye-opener as well. So there's lots of things happened during that time, mainly the demise of the British manufacturing, to be fair. That sort of everybody's offshoring over to China back in the late 2000s, following Chubb's lead. And then we got a number of UK importers and distributors from that. So it's been a long journey.
What is it that Mark finally sort of said to you to manage to convince you to join the fire safety industry?
Well, Mark's no longer with us, unfortunately. He had a huge heart attack a few years ago and passed away, sadly. But if you knew Mark and you knew how hard he worked and the character he was, his words to me were, "Come on, we'll have a laugh." And you know what? We did, and that's certainly made me do it. But working with Mark, he was a great leader. He was really good to learn from. I knew nothing about this industry when I first started, and he taught me the ropes. So yeah.
Was that your first sales role as well then at Thomas Glover?
I've been in sales for many years, working in commercial finance and banking sector and what have you. But coming over to the fire industry, I had a huge mission to learn everything about fire extinguishers and so on. So it was huge. I can remember thinking in my first couple of weeks, what have I done? But no, it's been good. It's been a good journey.
How long were you at Thomas Glover for then?
I think it was about 8 or 10 years, something like that. Yeah, and they made some organisational changes, one of which was letting Mark go and made him redundant. Colin Jackson stepped into the role to take over. Didn't really see eye to eye with Colin. Very different leadership skills from Mark Wardle to Colin Jackson, and that made my mind up. I just thought, I need to get out of here. So, and here I am.
What happened next after Thomas Glover then?
So I was a bit of a dispute with Thomas Glover, me wanting to get out from them. So I went to join a competitor, being Jewel. I did 12 months with Jewel. Again, it was a stopgap because I thought it's not really what I want to do full time. But it was, like I said, a bit of a dispute that I was falling out with TG. And then I met Roger Carr. So Roger Carr is a founder of Britannia Fire. Started Britannia Fire in 1970. And is still active today in the business. And Roger basically showed me the P50 in its very, very conception stage of a development. And I looked at it and I can remember driving away from the meeting thinking, this is just going to change everything. This is just too good to not be involved with. And again, I just grabbed the opportunity with both hands and took the challenge on board.
What year would that have been then? Because a lot of people think P50s is a fairly new innovation.
Yeah, we get that all the time. So, we want to talk about this new fire extinguisher. So 2010 is when we first launched it. So back in 2010, we got the kite mark, I think, in 2011. But we didn't go with the kite mark initially. We went with a company called Apragas in Belgium, who are a big notified body in Belgium, same as BSI in the UK. But have a speciality in gas cylinders and composite cylinders as well. So they knew about new technologies, they understood the nuances between steel and composite, and we needed somebody on board to do that. And also BSI is heavily influenced by some conglomerates. We didn't want them getting wind of what we was doing, especially when you're bringing a disruptive product to market. So 2010 was when we very first launched the P50. And now, you're right. People say it's a new product, but 2010 was the launch. Now 2025, we're actually already started with NATS, National Air Traffic Systems. We've swapped out all their extinguishers after the 10-year period. Yeah. We're just doing Anglian Water. We've done Thames Valley Police. So these are on their second transitional period of huge cost savings. I mean, Anglian Water was over £500,000. So huge cost savings again for another 10 years and a sustainable alternative to what's out there.
So where did the name P50 actually come from then? What does it mean?
I would wish this was a better story, but it's not. The P comes from project, so we had a project name. The project was Project, and then 50 was because high density polyethylene, which is the inner cylinder and the outer jacket of the P50, was 50 years old at the time when we developed the product. So it's Project 50, and that naturally got, as everything does, got shortened to P50. And that, like I say, I wish it was something better, but it's not. But that is, but it's stuck ever since. But I think it fitted really well. Sometimes these, accidents happen, but for the good. So it was really good. But and it's catchy. I mean, people now, it's dead simple. It's P50, easy to remember, easy recognisable. So.
It's nice that it's a round number. I guess if it was P47 or something like that, it would have been a little bit more awkward.
There is a P50 bubble car as well. So if you Google that, that's quite interesting. And there's P50 suntan cream. But as far as fire extinguishers go, we've got that trademarked, so that's fine.
Just going back to the meeting that you had with Roger then, what did you feel like at the time, seeing this product having over a decade in the industry at the time, knowing that this was going to hit the UK market and beyond?
Oh, well, Roger, for a start, is a character. So, again...
vouch for that.
Yeah. So Roger is very... We affectionately call him the nutty professor. Because if you want something making, you sketch it on a piece of paper, you show him, tell him what you want, give him the idea, and off he goes, and he comes back with something and improves upon it. I remember sitting in Roger's kitchen at his house in Norwich, and he brought out this cylinder which had got a huge gauge on it. I'm talking huge, but you would have for some welding tackle or whatever. And he said, this is the initial idea, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I don't know, how's he going to make that look like a fire extinguisher? Just can't understand it. And then we started talking about it, how he was doing it. And, you know, he told me a story, and the story was about when he used to own UK Fire International, and they were a huge company back in the day. And Sainsbury's, they had the contract for Sainsbury's at the time.
Yeah.
And Sainsbury's put an extinguisher on the table and asked them to carry out a basic service and then justify, I think it's 10 or 12 quid for doing it at the time. And then the writing was on the wall. People are getting fed up of maintenance and service. They don't want these additional costs all the time. So he had to think outside the box and think of something he could do. But when he was still at UK Fire at the time, UK Fire International, and the other directors of UK Fire were like, Roger, you've gone crazy. You can't do that because that's going to eat up our residual revenue, so recurring revenue rather. And Roger says, yeah, but this is what the customer wants, and this is what this is the way the industry's going to go. Trust me, it will go down this route. Anyway, long story short, they parted company. Roger went off. They went bust. The business was bought by a company called Connaught. They went bust. Then Roger bought the manufacturing plant back with the sole purpose of introducing the P50 back into the marketplace. But at the time, when we got the keys to Britannia Fire, and I turned up at site, and we had all these people stood around doing nothing. There was no work. There was nothing happening. We had no client base because UK Fire had separated, so we weren't supplying their own factory. So we had to very quickly adapt the P50. But all the staff that worked for us at the time, all they kept hearing was Project 50, P50, what is this? And we couldn't tell them because we needed to get the approval. So it was a massive learning curve for me, again, on composites and how they're made and so on and so forth. But Roger was a great he'd done all the knowledge and all the research on it. And they got with a guy called Tim Lenton as well. They worked together on developing the product in the very early days, and we've just took it from there and just softly improved it a long time as well.
How did those first sort of weeks and months go and look like for you introducing that to the market? I guess you were meeting various customers at the time.
Yeah, so I think the strategy-wise was the industry will love this. We thought naively that they would really take this on board. And I went to a number of customers. I'll give you one because they don't exist anymore, a company called Contract Fire. And I went to see these guys and they were like, great product, fantastic. But they could see, they knew what was going to be around the corner.
Yeah.
And they could see that this was going to massively disrupt their business. Now, they've sold their business subsequently.
Yeah.
Don't know if that was a decision because I've shown this extrusion. I doubt it very much. I doubt it very much. But they sold their business. But yeah, we talked to a lot of extinguisher companies and asked them to get on board, including SafeLinks at the time. So Harry and Stuart were very good friends of mine over the years with Thomas Glover and what have you. And I brought the concept to them, who had a very different opinion. Being an innovative business, they grabbed it with both hands. But these other naysayers, as we affectionately call them, just did not want to know at all. And funnily enough now, it makes me laugh every single day because you get these guys now coming on wanting to buy the product who've always called it black and blue, told so many lies about the product, so much scaremongering about the product. Absolute disgusting behaviour by some individuals, yet they're coming on now wanting to buy it, and it gives me my greatest pleasure to say no, we don't, no, thank you, we don't need your business, basically.
Well, you've literally made someone eat the hat, haven't you?
Yeah, Jay Leslie. So Jay was very, very controversial about the P50 in its early days. Really went on a campaign with others. It wasn't just on his own. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call from him into the office, and somebody tried to put me through to me, and I was like, who? Jay Leslie? Wants to speak to me? I thought, oh, we go. He's going to give me some grief over something or other. So I said, yeah, put him through. And he says, actually, I want to apologise and, credit where credit's due. I've seen a P50, I've seen the app, I've seen how it works, etc., etc. And I take my hat off to you, and I'd like to buy some. I'm going to eat my hat. So I said to him jokingly, well, he asked me if I'd supply him. Bear in mind what I've just said about not wanting to supply these people. So I says to him, yeah, I'll supply you, not a problem, Jay, on one condition. You post a photo of you eating your hat on LinkedIn and explaining the reasons why. And he did, and he bought a few. So, yeah, there you go.
Credit where credit's due.
Yeah,
Fair play to him.
No, absolutely fair play to Jay. So he's a lovely lad. He gets a bit enthusiastic at times, but yeah, he did what he said he'd do. So, yeah.
Once you realised that the trade was going to take the stance of almost feeling more threatened by the product, did you realise that you had to sort of take it to end users more so?
Yeah, so the journey to the end user had to happen because we couldn't get the fire trade on board to begin with. So in the early days, me and Stuart, we spent an awful lot of time together. Stuart Baxter from Safelinks, your MD, spent an awful lot of time together travelling to see customers and explain the concept and everything else behind it. At the same time, we were being reported to the Advertising Standards Agency by the trade. We was reported to trading standards by the trade. I must admit, there was no case to answer on either account, or the HSE that the reporters to. And I can remember the HSE guy turning around and saying he wouldn't be used as a political football, which was great to hear. And commended us on our fantastic engineering and how it was manufactured. He thought it was amazing and fascinating and could see why these people were worried. But, they keep coming out with the scaremongering stories to this day. But, yeah, I think it's less and less now.
You've got some good naysayer stories as well, haven't you? What's your personal highlight if you had to recount one?
It's a bit of a long story, but I had a phone call one day in the office from this guy asking to buy some P50 hoses.
Okay.
So I said, P50 hoses? Why do you want to buy P50 hoses? I had about 10 of them. And he says, no, I just want 10. That's all I need, just 10 hoses. I said, but what do you want them for? Because I need them. I just need them. I was like, well, we don't sell P50 hoses separate. I'm sorry, that's not. Well, I'm desperate for them. I need them. I said, well, why? He said, well, I'll tell you the truth. He said, I've gone into a customer and I've condemned the units that they've got. And he says, and I've chopped the hoses on the extinguishers so they couldn't use them again because I've condemned them. The guy's come back in, the customer who owned them, and said, what have you done? I've just bought these units. I bought them 6 months ago. There's nothing wrong with them. Why have you condemned them? And he said, well, because they don't meet British standard. He says, they don't need to meet the British standard. That's a voluntary code of practice. So why have you done that? Well, you need to replace them with what, repair them to how they were originally. Well, I want them back in my premises. So he had to replace the hoses. So I said to him, well, we don't sell hoses. So he said, well, what do I do? So I'll sell you 10 more units.
Nice.
And he had to buy 10 more units because these idiots need to learn a lesson, Yeah. Treating customers' property like that. And he's not the only one who's done it. There's numerous who've done it. I've had all sorts of stories. But, yeah, they just... They think it's their equipment. It belongs to the customer. I've had one guy in Manchester. I made him the customer rang me up complaining because he said he'd been ripped off. We ripped him off, he was accusing of, because we sold him an innovative product. But this engineer for a company in Manchester had lied to him. And I proved that he'd lied to him. So I got the engineer's phone number and made him take the extinguisher back and deliver it to the premises, which he did.
Yeah.
So, just call them out. Just call them out for what it is. Just,
See it all the time, don't you? We've seen it before, haven't we, on certain forums and groups and stuff where people have taken out perfectly good P50 units with 5, 6, 7 years left on them and replaced them with a steel unit that they then have to commission, service for the next 4 years, replace it, extended service.
It's crazy. It is crazy. But, and they get away with it. And how do they get away with it? Because the customers don't really know. And they'll always use British standards.
I was going to say, you just touched on that briefly there about the voluntary codes of practice that are the British standards, BS 5306. Do you want to expand a little bit more on that and how they work in relation to P50s?
Yeah, so British standards, I'm quite passionate about British standards because we manufacture to British standards, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and we do. But when it comes to installation, you've got to, I always give an analogy of this. So if you owned a corner shop and everything you sell in that corner shop was given to you free of charge, and you take all the profit from what you sell and you can reinvest it, do what you want with it, and then your shop gets stocked up with more product free of charge, That's a fantastic business idea, and that's exactly what BSI is. They're a publishing house who publish standards, and the content is written for them by experts who are vested interested experts from within the industry. So they write all the standards and the content for the to be published free of charge. They dedicate all their time, which is quite consuming, time to write standards and everything else. Then they publish them for public comment. So it goes out to the public to have their comment and see whether. Now, if you disagree with those standards and those public and you put all that information back in, then it gets reviewed by the same people that wrote the standard, right? So it's not a separate committee. Well, actually, it is a separate committee, but it's a separate committee formed from the existing committee who wrote the standard. So this is scandalous in this day and age. Why are we allowing this to happen in this country? And if you want to innovate in the fire industry, don't do it in the UK. I had a conversation with a similar company to us who've also innovated in the UK, and they've been blocked by standards. And they've gone to the USA, and they've sold more product in 3 months in the USA than they did the whole of last year in the UK. So standards, they're outdated, they're old-fashioned. It needs updating. It needs shaking up and down in a bag. Because really, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, it used to take 5 years to write a standard and publish a standard.
Yeah.
It still takes 5 years now. But 20 years ago, they sent memos through the post, they sent faxes over. We've got email now, we've got Teams, you've got fast levels of communication. But it still takes this length of time. And they still object to innovation. But why do they object to innovation? Because it affects their cash cow. If they suddenly turn around and say, oh, yes, you can do the maintenance yourself, their guy that's coming along in his van's not going to get his £5 or £6 that he's charging to service them, is he?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, or 25 quid in some services. But yeah, so it is very inward looking as British standards. But who do you blame? Do you blame British standards, or do you blame us as a country for allowing it to happen? Like I say, if you had a corner shop and all your stock was given to you for free, and there's no labour costs, and all you have to do is publish these standards like they're doing, it's a great business model for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Touching on the standard then, just briefly, obviously there was the update, wasn't there, revolving around water and live electrics.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Scandalous, really. So I also sit on 5306, but I also sit on a panel for EN3. I just recently got onto that panel. And across Europe, it is allowed to use a water-based product as long as it's passed its test, the dielectric test, which is written into the manufacturing standards, to use it on live electrics. Not an issue. And all these other European member countries endorse that. No issues whatsoever. The only one that has an issue with it is the UK. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, across Europe, you don't see many CO2s being sold either. But in the UK, you see everywhere. You see a 5-point, you typically see an extinguisher, a 5-point with two extinguishers, either a foam or a water or a powder and a CO2 next to it. So across Europe, it's fine. But in the UK, and the only reason they did that was to stop, not only an attempt to stop innovators such as ourselves. There's also other companies out there like FireXO who've also developed a product. There's Lifescape who've also developed a product. There's other spray cans that have developed, all using the same technology, all using the same British standard to prove that their product is safe for use.
Yeah.
And then these captains of industry come along and say, oh, not in our standard. They just sit there, well, if we write this statement here, that creates that ambiguity and that you can't really use it. But I just say to everybody, see it for what it is. Look at the EN37 standards, which we manufacture to. The manufacturers manufacture to that. And all the manufacturers I've spoken to are on board with that. Even though we compete with them, they're all on board. It's just the service companies where they want to sell you to, service to, and ultimately scrap to.
It is absolutely scandalous.
Yeah.
And it is crazy because it's the same electricity used all throughout Europe.
Exactly.
I think ours is a bit more high voltage, maybe.
Must be something in
Different
it.
type.
Yeah. And the water's the same. I mean, we use deionized water as well. So, come on. It's the nozzle technology. It's crazy. It really is crazy. These people can get away with it.
Do you think that if others don't adapt and sort of get on board with innovation, they're soon going to be left behind?
I think they're being left behind. I
Yeah.
don't think they're going to be. I think they are being. If you look at the likes of customers we have, such as Heathrow, we've got East Midlands Airport, over 25 universities working with us now, NHS trusts, London Ambulance Service, Fire and Rescue Services, put them in their own fire stations. People see that for what it is now. They are absolutely pulling the wool over people's eyes, and it needs to stop. So, but people want British manufactured product. They want sustainable products. They don't want to keep discharging extinguishers every 5 years and the contents, etc. It's this throwaway society we've become. We need to get back to basics, and protect the planet that we've got. And everybody says, oh yeah, well, you're not protecting the planet with a plastic extinguisher. That extinguisher can be recycled. It's not a one-use plastic extinguisher. It's recycled, as is the Kevlar as well. So,
are you starting to see a shift? It seems like over the last few years especially that the emphasis has gone from cost saving to more environmental and sustainable alternatives to traditional servicing.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think that's being driven more by the government. And the government is now this net zero target. When we're all going to pay taxes in the coming years on our CO2 emissions.
Yeah.
So people are getting ready so we can get into that. So nobody likes paying taxes. I mean, they're an essential part of how we live, but nobody likes to pay them. So if you can reduce your taxable amount by sustainable, it's a win-win for the environment and also for the customer. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, bringing a fire extinguisher 4,000 miles from China to the UK, put it into a warehouse, then it goes from a warehouse to a sub-distributor to an engineer's van, engineer's van to the customer's premises.
It's a lot.
It is an awful lot. Where we can manufacture them in little sunny Norfolk using our solar panels on our buildings now. More clean, more modern, more less energy using procedures as well. So it's a win-win, really is a win-win.
Moving away from sort of P50s, historically, as you mentioned earlier, innovation is slow and sometimes non-existent in fire safety in this country. What are some of the best innovations that you have seen, whether that be in the UK or overseas in America as well, for example?
Yeah, well, the P50 definitely, that's a no-brainer.
It goes without saying.
Yeah. The guys at Plumis, I like their innovation, which is a really clever sprinkler type application. It's a water mist application. It sticks on the wall. Basically, it's got infrared cameras. If there's a fire, it identifies it and sends a water mist stream to the fire and puts it out. What a fantastic bit of kit. But the sprinkler guys here in the UK don't like it. So what do? They sit around the table and change that standard.
Is that again because it's water mist? Is it because it's water based? Is that the?
It's just because it's an innovative product that's going to take some revenue away from them.
Yeah.
Sprinkler bulbs on the ceiling, yes, they've worked for years and there's nothing wrong with them, absolutely not. But come on, let's look at new modern technologies. Let's not flood a building with water where you can have a direct jet going to the actual fire and putting it out.
There seems to be a lot of stigma about just because we've always done it that one way, that same certain way, it must be the best way. And it's absolutely not the case.
No, exactly. And these guys these guys sit on these committees. They're paid considerably well by organisations to have that seat at the table so they can influence as well. I know some of these guys that sit on these committees, that's all they do. That's all they do. But that's how valuable that seat is to them, for that organisation.
Talk to us about lithium ion.
Yeah.
Lithium ion is a fire risk, but then also extinguishing agents and mediums around lithium ion batteries as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I was involved with AVD, which is the number one. I think they were the early adapters of product for the UK market and worldwide. They've got a massive distribution network now, not only in extinguishers but also in blankets as well. And they use vermiculite. So vermiculite's a really good heat absorbent material, and they've suspended it into water, deionized water again, creating this product which is 83% water, 17% vermiculite suspended. So basically, when you spread it onto a fire, it covers the fire and encapsulates it and reduces the heat and creates this barrier over the top as well, so it stops on any of the toxic gases. Now, you've got to be careful with the limitations of what these can do, these extinguishers, and I wouldn't certainly advocate anybody attacking anything larger than an e-scooter, for example. But I think they have a place, absolutely have a place. We need, because these fires are ferocious, even on a handheld mobile device or a laptop, they are tremendously fierce, and traditional extinguishers don't work. So you've got to have an alternative. Now, whether that's being used by the individual themselves or it's being used by the fire service when they attend, but I know fire service crews are carrying them on their appliances now because they've had some really good success. One in particular was in Surrey. I spoke to. They had a fire with a hybrid vehicle. Couldn't put it out. They was putting gallons and gallons of water onto it. Just couldn't do it. They went back and fetched 2 extinguishers back from the fire station, sprayed it onto the engine compartment and put it out. Put the battery out. So they were great advocates of AVD, and we are going to be launching the AVD in the P50 in the coming months as well. We're just trying to get through these notified bodies at the minute, which takes time.
So, Andy, obviously there's a lot of talk about foams being banned, particularly obviously the old AFFFs. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this has been going on for quite some time, but there's different types of chemistry, and yes, it's quite confusing because there is a ban in place for PFOA, that's already in place, and then we're looking at PFAS going forward, which we expect a ban to come into place either end of this year or very start of earlier next year. And we've adapted to our principles of adopting early a PFAS-free range, and we've got the water mist range as well, so that overcomes that issue for us. But I think these are cancer-causing chemicals, so it's right to get them out of our environment. But the problem is the persistent organic pollutants, so they don't degrade. So it's, where do we put all this foam once we take it out? How are we going to get rid of it? So they've talked about incineration. That seems to be the topic of interest now. But if you look at the incineration, all you're doing is putting it into the environment. So it comes out as steam, goes into clouds, evaporates, comes back down, and we get into our rainwater and into our soil. So maybe incineration is not the right way to do it. And I don't know what is the right way to do it either at the moment. There's lots of talk about it. But this is not just firefighting foams. There's over 10,000 chemicals affected with this, with these types of materials. So it is a long journey that's going to happen. We just don't know when. And I wish the government would just get off the backside and make a decision, because we've got France last month issued what they're going to do. Australia did it 2 or 3 years ago. We just seem to be lagging behind again. What I will say, if anybody's not heard of this issue, and who's listening to this podcast, if you watch, there's a film on Netflix, I think it's called Dark Waters.
Yes, yeah.
Which is where this was all first discovered with 3M in the States, where they had a factory. I'm sure it was 3M. Might not have been, just to be on the safe side. But they had this factory, and basically there was polluting into the water stream, and the farmer's cattle was eating it. Don't want to spoil the film for you. So, but yeah, that was something which was really interesting. Certainly opened my eyes to it as well. One interesting point though, and I did elaborate on this a little bit earlier about the fire industry reporting us to trading standards and to the health and safety executive about our P50 product when we first launched it, and they said that one of the arguments was our foam wouldn't last for 10 years.
Okay.
Well, guess what? It doesn't degrade. We was using this foam years ago. So now they're saying, you can't get rid of it. It's called forever chemicals. But hang on a minute. A few years ago, that was a different story. So, yeah. But no, absolutely, it's the right thing to do. It's going to happen. We just don't know when.
Yeah.
Looking at your personal mission, hopefully I've got this quoted correctly as well, so do please let me know if I'm wrong. Your mission is to improve fire safety and add value to the end users by simplifying maintenance and inspections, putting them in greater control and reducing costs and environmental impact. How are you doing that?
I think it's going really well. I think we're halfway or more than halfway there with the P50. We developed the P50 app as well, so as a customer can check the app on their inspections and our asset list as well. which is all free as part of the service. There's been resistance, as we know, along the way, but I think modern technologies allow us to bring a whole breadth of fresh and innovative ideas. Just do it in America, though. It's a lot easier. So we are talking to other countries that we are developing, working with. We're just now talking to we've done a lot of work in the Middle East, and we've just started putting products out into the Middle East oil fields. We're talking to civil defence out there about our offering and what we can do, and some other little clever things we're going to bring on stream as well in the coming months, or certainly in the next 12 months. And I think technology allows us to do so much more. I mean, it's so exciting when you start looking at it, what you can actually do. Even down to our manufacturing, so we're in an old manufacturing unit in Norfolk, but we're now looking at robots and how we utilise robots in our business and our production lines. Not because our guys are not very good at it, because they are very, very good. And we're not going to lose headcount through introducing robots. And I've explained this to our staff because it's a very difficult transition period for them. But, anybody under the age of 30 doesn't want to work in a factory anymore. That's what happens. So we've got to future-proof our business by utilising automisation and robots, and I think that brings, when you start looking into that, you think, well, actually we could adopt that idea for the extinguisher itself, and it's huge. Once you start looking into it, it's mind-blowing.
There's so many advancements out there, isn't there? And I think for the future of British manufacturing, I think embracing these changes and implementing them into your day-to-day work, like you say, there's people under 30 aren't wanting to work in factory anymore, but that's absolutely integral for British manufacturing.
Exactly. But they all want to go on Instagram and start promoting stuff and selling it and becoming an influencer and earning six-figure salaries and living in Dubai. So I don't know where you get these jobs, but if you do know one going, I'll have one. But it's difficult to get young people engaged now and get them over, even come for an interview. It just doesn't happen.
If you look to using AI and other bits of software on more sort of administrative processes as well?
Yeah, we're looking. I've been talking to one of the guys that used to be at the FIA as a general manager, and he's now set up his own consultancy doing AI.
Okay.
So that is something we're going to link in with the robotics and the procedures in the office with new software systems as well. So it's all going that way, but it's just how much time to implement all these things. It's all really exciting, but then you think, well, I need 2 or 3 people to initiate that, 2 or 3 people to do this. So it's just ticking them off the list as we go through.
I guess it's weighing up that short-term pain for that long-term success as well.
Absolutely.
Do you think the fire safety event next month will be showcasing different bits of things coming to market in assisting fire safety companies as well?
Not really, and I'd say not really. Purely, it's a bit controversial because every goes to showcase a new product. But look at fire extinguishers. What's changed apart from the P50? What has changed since 1980s? Nothing.
No.
Nothing. They'll buy the same steel cans, they're filling with the same medium, foam, water, or powder. Do it as cheap as they possibly can. We was talking before the podcast started about when I was at TG, and you get people ring up back then, and they would change their mind over a pallet of extinguishers to save 5 pence. No loyalty for what they do. 5 pence. I used to argue with people, say it's cost you more to make the phone call to argue over that 5p. But that's the industry they're in. There's no desire to change it. They just want the same stuff as cheap as chips. They're not bothered about the quality. They just want it as cheap as they possibly get it, sell it into their customer, and then just service the life out of it to get their income.
That's a race to the bottom as well, isn't it? There's only one way that's ended.
And that's exactly what happened. So all these extinguisher manufacturers that were here all these years ago then went off to China. They all came back from China with these new products. They launched them. Chubb being one as well. Chubb was the first one to go to China when I was at TG. And let's be honest, when we first started selling the product from China, it was 3 months before they told us. We didn't see any difference between what we was making at Ferndale in Wales in the factory and what we was making from China. They did it so well; it was absolutely identical. The boxes, the product codes, everything. But what happened, because Chubb was the first to do it, everybody followed suit. So they all started doing it, and it all became imported fire extinguishers. But then what they didn't realise was that, yes, they'd become the race to the bottom with the internet sales as well.
Yeah.
Everybody's undercutting everybody else. But then what they didn't realise, because they're not that bright, what they didn't realise was they still had the same overheads. So their overheads were remaining the same.
Yeah.
They'd imported extinguishers and were selling them for less. Their margins were getting better, but then they just eroded their own margin. So at the end of it, they were left with, how do you generate income? I know. Let's put some guys sat around a table writing the rules and the standards for that free publisher to issue. Then we can generate some income from it. So changing the O-rings. We never used to change the O-rings on a hose every time we did it. No, it was £2 or £3. That'll do. and this is, it sounds daft, but that's exactly how they've done it. And they've had no choice but to do that because they've eroded their own margins.
That's it.
With that race to the bottom.
And that's annual reoccurring revenue as well, isn't it? And then 5 years, let's sell them another unit again.
Exactly that.
Even Dick Turpin wore a mask. Eh?
He did, yeah.
When you initially went to market with SafeLinks, like, how did that process go? What did you do? I know you said obviously you were out and about with Stuart a lot, introducing it to customers.
Yeah, so first protocol was coming to he'd see Harry and Stuart together, and just showing them the P50 at the time, and I can remember Harry's an engineer by trade, and so he was really excited. And for those who know Harry, he can get excited from time to time. I'll tell you a funny story about that. But yeah, so Harry, he was really involved in the P50. Loved the concept, loved the idea, loved the product. Understood it was going to disrupt the marketplace and everything that brought with it. Bear in mind, he had a fire extinguisher company and maintenance, and he had everything else going with it. So he had a choice to make. But I can remember Harry saying to me, the choice is for the customer. This is what the customer will want, and that's where we need to focus our efforts.
Yeah.
And we did, and we did our first exhibition together, me and Harry, at the NEC in Birmingham, where we had people queuing up to talk to us.
Wow.
It was people, really, always something new, because they haven't seen anything new.
Yeah.
It's just the norm walking around that whole estate, and you just think, that's just another extinguisher. But this was something new. And it was exhausting, those 3 days that me and Harry did. It was because you just non-stop talking to people, just the two of us. And from that, we got a huge amount of leads. I mean, Stuart went to see him, what have you. I can remember us getting our first customer on board with it. It was just like ecstatic. And it was quite a decent company.
Yeah.
And that was it then. Every time we got a win, it was just like, wow, this is great. And I'm talking in our first year, we probably only sold about 4,500 units, which is not a lot. To say we do that sometimes in a week now. But yeah, it was very much a case of quick wins and doing it. But at that NEC, the funny story I was going to tell you was Harry, and I was travelling home at the end of the night back to Nottingham, and he was staying over because it was a fair distance from Lincoln to the NEC. And I said, "Oh, what are you going to do tonight, Harry?" And he actually went, and you won't believe this, but he actually went to watch a breakdancing competition, right? And I thought he was winding me up.
Yeah.
So the next morning I came to the show. I said, "How'd you get on last night?" He says, "Yeah, I went to the breakdancing competition. It was great. They were spinning on their heads. They were doing this. But why?" So I've always liked breakdancing. He says, and I checked to see what was on in the area, and it was on.
Did you not fancy joining them?
No, I went home. But no, it was good. It was intriguing. So I learned something new about Harry that day.
Something else about Harry, he's a huge ambassador and advocate of water mist as well, isn't he? How did the idea of P50 water mist come about?
It's the environment, I think, with Harry. It was very much, again, PFOA, before PFAS ban, the PFOA ban was coming in on board, and he was like, well, we need to move away from these chemicals and what have you, and water mist is a really good firefighting capability, and so on and so forth. And he came to us, and I must admit, at the very beginning, we was reluctant to develop another product because the sales were still beginning on the P50 trajectory, and was trying to get some investment back in. And Harry was very much so, come on, I'll help support to do it, which he did. And that's why we got exclusivity with SafeLinks for the first 2 years. And it's took off really well. You know, it has. It's got good fire ratings. The problem we've got with the people sat around the committee again is that they don't want to accept it. They don't want to accept the innovation. They're reluctant to do it. But that's another story. So.
It's truly evil, isn't it, a P50 water mist, because it's service-free and water on live electrics.
Yeah, it really is. It doesn't do any good. But you know, these guys are soon to be retiring, so maybe something will change then. I actually had a fire officer call me. Was it yesterday or the day before? I think. First time he'd seen a P50 in a hospital, and he was just ringing for some advice, and I started talking to him about it. And actually, when I started talking to him about it, he really understood. And they don't get that a lot from fire safety inspectors, because they come from a vast array of different industries when they first join. But this guy used to own a fire extinguisher company, and he didn't tell me at the beginning, but he understood as I was talking to him. And he was like, sounds like a great product. At the end of it, he'd sold his fire extinguisher company a few years ago, went to be an enforcement officer for the fire service, and said, sounds a fantastic idea. And I can see why people are upset with it.
I think quite a lot of the time it is that people just don't quite understand the concept, isn't it? Initially, they just hear things or see things online and they almost take that as gospel.
Yeah.
What would be your message to them? Like, what would be the one thing that you'd like them to understand that you often realise that they don't quite understand or they misconstrue?
Yeah, I don't think we get it so much now. I don't think it's as prevalent as it used to be. But what I would say is, look, if you want to come to the factory, you're more than welcome to come. Have a look around, see it being manufactured. We're fortunate to have our own fire testing facility as well, so we can set some fire to some stuff and let you put some units to the test as well. But yeah, just come and see it for the horse's mouth. Don't take the word for these people who's got a vested interest.
That sounds like our first Firewatch group outing.
Yeah.
So anyone listening, if you want to take Andy up on that kind offer, get in touch, let us know. We'd certainly love to welcome you. You mentioned during the conversation just there about being at the NEC back in the early days, launching the product with Harry. Are you finding yourself there again next month, this year?
Yeah, so I'm going hopefully with you guys in April. So we'll be, I think we've got a big stand as well. So that's good. Big stand, lots, and we've also got a panel discussion with Billy from Landsec about sustainability. Landsec have just had the P50 or are having the P50 rolled out across all the estate by you guys at SafeLinks, and that's been a real big customer for us, and some big benefits on the sustainability sides, and I think we wanted to get that across in the talk as well.
Yeah, so anyone that does find themselves at the fire safety event at the NEC next month, stop by on the Wednesday. Andy, Stuart and Billy will be doing a talk all about P50s and sustainability. Be great to see you there.
Yeah, for sure.
I must admit, I am just coming back from a stag weekend in Benidorm, so I can't promise you how good I'm going to be.
In early.
Yeah, just in case I'm a bit battered and worn on the stand, that's my reason.
So, Andy, going to move on to our burning questions segment now. So this is something we're going to introduce. So we'll ask you a question now.
Yeah.
So you're the first one. Congratulations. After you've answered your question, you then pose a question to whoever the next guest we have on is. So it could be literally anything, like it could be an inspirational question. It could be, what's your favourite flavour of crisp?
Right.
Anything you want. So for you, Andy, your burning question is, when was the last time you took a big leap of faith?
Don't say doing this podcast.
No, that's easy. That's an easy one actually. August last year, we produced the Britannia range of metal extinguishers since 1986, and we continued to produce them all the way up to August last year. And we decided in August to stop the manufacture completely. We still had people ordering them, but it was more important for us to have the space for the P50 range and also to become more sustainable as a business. So we decided August last year to stop manufacturing, clean all that product out, and then refurbish the factory to accept those changes. So that was as much to Roger's discourse. He was very, very nervous. And I must admit that when Roger finally because it took a lot to convince him, but when we did finally convince him, on the Thursday, by Saturday morning, I got everything out of that factory because I knew he'd change his mind.
Quickly, get it on that.
Yeah.
Strike while the iron's
So
hot.
we got it out, and it's all, and it proved. Since then, it's been the right decision.
It's paid off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. What is your burning question for the next guest?
What's the hardest thing you've ever had to accept in business that you could not change?
Nice.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Very good question.
Real good.
Thank you very much for joining us, Andy. It's
You're
great
welcome.
to have you on.
Thanks, Andy.
Just remember, I was the first. When,
If you never hear this episode,
yeah.
um,
I'm going to get cancelled, aren't I?
no, you've done worse than
Far
this.
worse.
Yeah, I have. You're right.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and follow.